Well, we're doing things like alkaline water and lots of vitamin C, lots of vitamin D, vitamin A, trying to get fresh air, all the things that I talk about: exercise, sleep, fresh air, fresh water, good food, try to eat organic as much as we can, try to get some little bit of exercise, get out of the chair and away from the computer and do some exercise. And I think that that's what's really, really important. And the other thing is a lot of, our emotions play a big role on what happens to our bodies also. And if you live in that state of fear, that big fear factor, what that does is it suppresses your cortisol levels and it increases your cortisol levels and makes you more susceptible to illness and disease. So my husband and I, we just don't live in a fear-based place about all this stuff. We sort of look at it and say, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I'm not going to do it. And whatever happens is going to happen. And if I have to self-quarantine and hole up in my house with food and vitamins and water, that's what I'm going to do.
While you can still get vitamins.
While you can still get it.
Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, stay there. I want to get into the fact that Dr. Monteith has a flu report from the CDC saying it's going to peak the middle of next month, right when all the vaccine injections get going. I want to get into adverse reactions in Europe from the vaccine and other vaccines. The forced inoculation. Stay with us. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest. Sherri, I want to get into the open announcements trying to force police, firefighters, military, medical workers to take the shots, threatening to fire them. But also just the vaccine manufacturing process, the adjuvants, the fact that Dr. Monteith, medical doctor, was on with us yesterday, and he talked in detail. And we went to the CDC's own website, and they admitted that upwards of 37% of people they've tested in the U.S. and also in Australia have been found to have the H1N1 and didn't even get sick from it. And it appears to be very mild. And this whole thing, we know they've been secretly preparing for it since January. Give us your take on that.
Well, it's not that much different than what was happening with the bird flu with H5N1, Alex, 3 years ago. And that they were saying that there were tens of thousands more people in Southeast Asia and China and around and in that part of the world that had been infected and weren't even sick enough to go to the doctor. And yet the ones that were the most sick and in the hospital and perhaps had a fatal or a bad outcome, those were the ones that they were using only for the statistics, so that if they had admitted 100 people to the hospital and 50 people died, they call it a 50% death rate. But the truth is if 100 people went to the hospital and there were 10 or 20,000 people who were sick enough to not even, or who weren't even sick enough to go to the doctor, that changes the denominator and makes the death rate, some infinitesimally small number. And I don't think it's any different now with the swine flu. I mean, they've said that they thought that by flu season this year, almost a third of the general population in the U.S. would have either been exposed or would have been sick by the H1N1 virus. So what is the big deal? They say it's highly infective, but it has a low virulence, which means a lot of people can get it, a lot of people can spread it around, but not very many people get sick from it.
Continue breaking that down.
In terms of, what do you mean?
Why are they hyping it then if it's no big deal?
They really want us to get this vaccine for one reason or another. And one of the things that I've said for a while is that this is either phase 3. This is like when you're in the Navy and you have to do all of these final checks before you you launch a ship out to the ocean. This is either the final test to make sure that all of the implementation things are in place before they pull the big trigger in the final one, because it's looking less and less like this is going to be it. We've had 3 trial runs. We've had SARS, we've had H5N1, and now we've had this one, the H1N1. They're talking about it. Is it going to ramp up this winter? And wouldn't it be a coincidence if it ramped up right around October 15th when the vaccine was supposed to be delivered? And, they've got these emergency utilization authorizations that are sitting back in the backdrop, the EUAs, which have been put into place by the 2006 PrEP Act, so that at any given time, the head of Department of Health and Human Services can just say, oh, we really need this vaccine. We don't have enough vaccine. We haven't manufactured enough of it. Let's pull in all the vaccine we can from everywhere. Oh, isn't it interesting? The ones we have the most of came from China and from Europe, and they're the ones that have the squalene and the AS03 and the MF59.
Well, let me stop you. I want to go through that, but you're saying pull the trigger on the big event. All these little events, dry runs to set up the medical tyranny infrastructure. Ron Paul talked about that last hour. Are you saying they may release something else or try to do a forced inoculation? What is the big event?
Well, either that there is the virus gets suddenly worse, either something is released. It seems so weird, Alex, that if something was really made in nature, which they're trying to make us believe, would suddenly have a ramp up, and particularly since everything coming out of South America and the Southern Hemisphere says that it didn't ramp up at all down there. So could it be that they're going to have another test tube-made virus that could be released at some major event in the winter? You know, we've got the Winter Olympics that are coming up this winter, and it makes me nervous to think that there'll be people that will be going to Vancouver from all over the world and in the middle of the winter time. And is that a point in time where the virus may be contracted, be worse, and be spread by just the humans going back home?
Doctor, we're about to break, but I want to spend time on this in the next segment. I want to flesh this out because this is what every other medical doctor I have on says they believe is being set up. And my dad called me Sunday night and said, check your email, and I didn't see it, and I need to call him and find out what he was talking about. He said he got a CDC report that he was reading online that said, oh, we believe it could mutate, and then they gave the mutation into something super hyper deadly in the next few months, and they gave the calculation. Are you aware of what he was talking about?
No, I've read a little bit of that, but I haven't perhaps read as much specific as what you have.
But that's exactly what you're saying, because we see this massive buildup, troops suddenly popping up on the streets all over the U.S. and Europe. Yep. Stay there. Let's talk about how this may unfold, because we've never seen such a buildup at this level. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest. DrTenpenny.com is her website. Stay with us.